In three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show. I'm your host Ben, and for once, I'm actually quite happy to do the show today. In fact, I'm even in a mood where I'm asking, can Liverpool play Man City every weekend? Only a little bit tongue in cheek there, but not really. I think that's been the best performance, obviously, so far in the year. It was they basically they treated it like it was their Super Bowl or Champions League final, and they played that way. So yeah, well, we're happy to talk about that and talk about all the other games that happened in the over the weekend. And actually, to before introducing my co-host, I think that was a good result for you guys as well. So welcome again, Rex.
It was. I think a lot of Arsenal fans were Liverpool fans as well this weekend, so
There we go.
it was really good, man. And it was a bit surprising, not necessarily that Liverpool won, but that they were actually able to shut down Holland and completely shut down City. And I guess it's nice too for the Invincibles, I guess, to pop that champagne bottle now that City are officially defeated and not in the running for an undefeated season.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's a
Yeah.
fair shout as well.
It's so hard that it's probably not going to happen anyway. It's just a matter of time before like an undefeated team loses. But yeah, I mean, pretty good. I think yeah, that's it. Everyone's got at least one loss. So Mercury Morris, pop the Dolphins champagne bottle.
There we go. Good reference. All right, and so before we get started with that game, I think it's fair to lead off with that game. We'll do what we've done pretty much every week is start off with like basically our story of the week, and I'll go first because I saw that you kind of wanted to maybe do a flip side to what I was going to say, but I do think we're starting to actually see injuries show up a little bit, and I don't know if it's due to the lack of a preseason, the quick restart, the congested schedule, but we're starting to see teams kind of lose stars now. I mean, Luis Diaz for Liverpool last week. It looks like Jota is going to now miss the World Cup after this the City game. He got something happened to his calf basically the last minute of the game, and it's really devastating because he was starting to really look a special player. In fact, he what's kind of been disappointing is he's only returned to the squad, to be honest. So you worry about maybe him re-injuring something else because he had a really bad hamstring injury to even start the season. But man, was he starting to look really, really good, and that's a big loss for Liverpool. And obviously, I think that's a big loss for Portugal. But it's not just Liverpool. In the midweek, Chelsea lost Reece James. They lost Wesley Fofana the week before that, and on Saturday it looks like Richarlison had to leave the Everton game on crutches. Now, sometimes that doesn't mean anything. They just want to get the weight off the foot, but it didn't necessarily look good. He was in tears. So I actually should have looked before starting the show. I haven't looked for an update, but it's possible his World Cup might be in jeopardy as well. And so I'm starting to agree with our buddy Jeremy, who's had this thesis that as we get closer to Qatar, we're going to see maybe some of these stars try to phone in a few performances. And I mean, that's understandable just by human nature, but that could potentially change some of these games before we actually get there. So that might be a different thing for managers to have to deal with. And so yeah, that's just what I wanted to lead off with. Rex, what do you got?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because I think that is probably happening too, but I think it's maybe more the mental side. Because I'm just hoping that these players are like I'm not guaranteed on the plane to Qatar, and or I need to earn my starting job, and maybe they're being like, hey, I need to start with some kind of form so that way I can carry it over into the World Cup. But the mental part I think is maybe now it's like if you get hurt, you're missing the World Cup, so that might creep into people's like minds, and if you play worried about getting hurt, a lot of the time you actually get hurt. So I mean, even though like they're professionals, and they're very strong mentally, I mean, I'd feel like it would still be creeping in. Like if Shaka's going in for a tackle, it's got to be a little bit in his mind, like, hey, if I get hurt, I'm not playing in the World Cup. I'm missing the World Cup, and this is my last chance.
Mhm.
So I think maybe it does kind of creep in mentally. But I guess just further to that point, I went back because there weren't a lot of goals scored this week. I went back and counted all the goals scored for each match week, and this week it's match week 11, but it's really match week 10 because match week 7 was postponed.
Mhm.
But match week 11 had 15 goals scored, which is really low. The second lowest was match week 8, and 23 goals were scored, but three fixtures were postponed. So six teams didn't even play. So that kind of talks to your point maybe a little bit there, um, because that's a really low scoring number. But also, fixture congestion, like you talked about. I know Arsenal have looked kind of leggy the last two games. So maybe that plays a part in it. But the average match week, we're seeing 28.3 goals. And this week we only saw 15. So it'll be interesting to see kind of, if that scoring trend, the low scores continue. Because we're playing again, today and
Today. Yeah.
Wednesday.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, it'll be interesting to see if, the goals kind of drop a little bit. And we'll start to learn more if it's, mental blocks or teams are getting leggy. We'll see. But, Man City have a week off this week too, basically. So maybe that will help them too. And
Yeah,
not a good week. Pep's going to be pissed, I think, this week.
we'll get to that too because one thing that they did is Pep only used one sub. You got five. And he's done this in a number of games. Jeremy has actually texted
Hmm.
me a number of times, being like, "Does Pep think this is Squid Games, where like if you use a sub, you lose the player forever?" Um, right, because like you said, they uh, they don't have to worry about a midweek game this week, and so you figured you could have actually given some guys some rest, or made them really. He could have maybe done some things to get bring on some other legs, and it's weird that he didn't because he didn't have anyone to doesn't have to rest someone for the midweek.
Hmm.
But yeah, we'll
Yeah, and he
get
did that last year too. Remember, like he was complaining about how EPL needed five subs last year, and then he like did a lot of games where he did one sub or no subs, and we were like, "Why are you complaining about it if you're not going to do it?" But yeah, yeah, interesting, and he seems to do that. Maybe it is like a Squid Games thing.
that is he's just like that's weak. You're weak if you can't go the full 90. But anyways, so we will start with Liverpool and Man City, and Liverpool do go on to win 1-0. And frankly, just everything, at least from the Liverpool end, started before the game because the lineup was different and the formation was different. We've actually started to see now 3 games where it does seem is Klopp is game to change things up and actually get away from basically playing a 3-man midfield. And so the back line was James Milner and Joe Gomez next to Virgil, and Robertson was back in the lineup, and with Fabinho and Thiago pivot. And so, one, it was not good to see Kanate not in the squad. He apparently picked up something after the Rangers game. And then, two, no Henderson, which was no healthy Henderson. He was on the bench. He came on in the second half. But another thing, too, was the front lineup was Elliott, Firmino, Jota, and then Salah in the middle. And this is another thing that's just, it's not something we've necessarily seen in a while.
Mm.
And frankly, I do think this is the reason why they ended up actually getting the result. And it's maybe a reason why they looked a little bit different than they have in the past. And then for City also did something a little different. Pep went with a back three. I can't remember the last time he did this, to be honest. Played
Mm.
Cancelo on the right, and then Foden was almost like the left wing back. And man, did that not work well at all either. And then the front three was basically Kevin De Bruyne and Gundogan, and then it was Holland all by himself. And I think this was maybe the first game you really saw Holland isolated. And so, just to kind of quickly talk about the goal, and then just kind of open it up for discussion. Salah does get the goal. He had a couple of chances actually in this game to score. It was he had an earlier, basically 1v1 chance. He even had a square ball to Jota that I was cursing him for not doing not doing the FIFA pass. But he does get it past Ederson, and really this all comes from just City trying a free kick, and it's a poorly hit missed free kick right to Allison, and Allison looks up and immediately sees that he can maybe try to get Salah through, and plays almost like a line drive to him. And then Cancelo messes up where he tries to beat Salah to the ball. I think if Cancelo stays back and he's able to just kind of, basically keep Salah in front of him, I don't think that happens. And then, so one thing I saw is Cancelo definitely had Salah in his mind, in the back of his mind, and maybe that is the reason why Pep played him on that side. He was worried about Cancelo and Salah being isolated 1v1, because we saw that in the October game last year, when Salah kind of skinned him a little bit, and so
Hmm.
maybe you can kind of see why Pep did that. But at the same time, it is a disastrous goal for City to give up, because it really did come from nothing. Obviously, because you're trying to get guys forward on a free kick. It's similar to what Liverpool did last week versus Arsenal, where the center backs tried to go forward and maybe knock on a header or to add an extra body in the box, and because you're doing that, you're exposing themselves a little bit to the back. But it is an insane ball by Allison. And another thing to say is this is this is like his fourth assist or a third assist, and a fourth goal plus assist, like combination, um, in the league. And so he's gotten one of these like once every year. That is wild. And
Yeah.
then a couple chances at the end for Liverpool to put it away. That Darwin Nunes, he looked bright in everything but the final product. So I don't know if that's worth praising him or freaking out over. We'll see how he goes, or we'll see how that ages, how his rest of the season goes, because there are a lot of positives whenever he plays, but a lot of uh-ohs. And then I guess the last point was, at the end of the game, Klopp did get sent off for being super irate at Bernardo Silva, basically dragging Mohamed Salah to the ground. Um, and the post reaction to this, I'd actually be curious what your thoughts are on this as well, Rex, because a lot of people want him to be Klopp to be basically taught a lesson. I've heard it's not only a one match ban; it might be three. They want to
Hmm.
make an example out of him. But the reason why Salah is so upset, and I think people have been missing this, is Bernardo Silva drags Salah to the ground, and Salah lands on his shoulder almost. Like nothing happens, thankfully. But I've seen this happen before, where Salah wasn't able to get up after that. And he really messed up his shoulder. He missed the World Cup because of that. I think that was maybe in the back of
Yeah.
Klopp's mind as well. He
The
wanted
Ramos, right?
he wanted to
The,
protect his
that
player.
Ramos,
Yeah,
the Ramos pull down. Yeah, yeah. And then he didn't. He also missed the Champions League, didn't he? Or did he come back, but wasn't really that great? I can't remember. But
he
yeah,
he tried to play
he
it for
hurt his
like
shoulder
five
the same
minutes
way.
and had to go off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's
Hmm.
right. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. I would be mad too, honestly, if I was Klopp. You get like if the refs aren't going to protect your players, like the manager has to try to do it, I guess, and yell at the refs. So I don't know. I mean, I think he's pretty tempered, Klopp. Like I don't see the need for a three-match ban or for the league to make an example of him. Hopefully, like I don't think it was that bad.
I think that's probably
Stand up for
why
your
too.
players.
Like
Hmm.
nice guy. They want to be like, even nice guys can't do this to us. Because Klopp
Yeah.
did Klopp did kind of get in front of the ref's face, and they want to. These refs are the biggest babies in the world. They want to be a protected class almost. Um, so we'll just kind of get started there. Well, what were your first takeaways, and then I guess we can bounce off, or you can talk about City, I can talk about Liverpool, or vice versa.
Well, yeah, my first takeaways were, I read Klopp's pregame presser. I guess it was the day before the game, and he basically kind of outlined Liverpool's thoughts and what they need to do. And obviously, I think he even said it in the presser, but he was like, "It's easier said than done." But really, what we need to do is cut the supply line to Holland,
Mhm.
and that's really, I mean, he basically said too that's hard to do. But I think him playing Fabinho and Thiago was the perfect deep midfield pairing to do this, and they kind of set up in a defensive shell, and they were able to pressure, Silva. They were able to pressure De Bruyne, Rodri, Gundogan, and they weren't able to get their head up and pick out good passes because they're just constantly there's a Liverpool player in their face. So they denied time and space to those creative midfielders. And then the other thing was, and this was really just a good pairing too at center back with Gomez and Van Dijk. But Klopp said if you're going to beat Holland or and City and try to minimize their chances as a center back, you have to basically take on Holland one v one a lot. And he said, if Van Dijk comes out and he's on Holland, and then Gomez comes too, and we have two or three defenders even stepping to Holland, then there's going to be just a ton of space for other people to run into. So it was really important for Gomez and Van Dijk to win those 1v1 battles with Holland. And
That's an excellent
obviously,
point.
they weren't perfect because Holland did have like a header right at Allison, but they were really really good. And Van Dijk kind of just knew that they like to ping that back stick pass. and he had just a ton of clearances with his head in this game, and that was crucial. And then the third thing was we're going to attack their high line with the deep ball, and the perfect example was Allison's deep ball, and then Salah scored. So high line, play the deep pass, it worked really well. And I think he got the selection right. Klopp did because Alcantara and Fabinho were fantastic, and Van Dijk and Gomez together were great too. So it was good. It was good. It was good to see Van Dijk kind of put in a vintage performance too, because we know what he's capable of, but he hasn't necessarily showed it on a consistent basis after that ACL injury. So that was really good too.
Hmm.
And then finally Fabinho and Alcantara together. It's a couple games in a row now. They're starting to build a pretty good partnership there in midfield.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of joked about wanting to play City every week, just because well, it's now 3 wins in a row that Klopp actually has over Pep. And
Man.
both the games in the league last season were draws. Um, it's almost like because City are so far ahead in the table, and Arsenal is even 4 points ahead of them. It really was almost a free game in a way I haven't really seen. Like Liverpool had a lot more freedom. I just don't feel like I've seen them show in the past. I mean, also in a weird way, City were kind of playing free themselves. I didn't see any of this intensity that I've seen in past games from them, at least in the first half. The second half got cooking a little bit, but I just remember the game in October last year. I remember telling Jeremy I thought I was watching 10v11. I mean 9v11 because Ederson was basically an outfield player. Liverpool could not get them to turn it over last year, and they were playing James Milner and Henderson. James Milner was the right back in that game also, and then Henderson was getting just absolutely cooked by Bernardo Silva in midfield that day. And so I think Klopp won this game by you said by making the selections he did. It's a big call to bench Henderson healthy because he's still the captain, and so
Yeah.
Henderson did come on in the second half, and so I like the idea of maybe trying to phase him out or maybe trying to play Fabinho, trying to make him basically a second half sub, but in a pivot, not doing that job by himself. And
Right.
that's maybe a way you
He's
can
just too
rest.
old to do that by himself.
That's
They got to
right,
phase him out. Yeah.
that too. But I mean, it's just all these injury issues. Uh, Klopp won with one his decision to do that with Henderson, but two, I think it was just to play Salah as central striker again. Too many times he's been out wide and kind of been used as like a playmaker. And this wasn't just this season. This happened. This was the beginning this was the end of last season after he returned from African Cup of Nations. And so I didn't know if Salah was doing that because he didn't want to make runs anymore because he had heavy legs or not. But it looks like he's got plenty of legs and he's just been almost played in a different role. So that was really good to see. I like how you touched on Van Dijk. Van Dijk is actually a perfect example of a player that I feel like has been phoning it in this year a little bit because he doesn't want to be hurt for the World Cup. And this was a time because you saw him running, you saw him engaging in 1v1s, like you said, taking on players, you saw him diving to the ground, and you just saw him being way more physical than he's been in the past. And he actually could have gotten hurt when he tried to when he successfully cleared a header away because he landed in the goal.
Mhm.
Because without that happening, I think Holland was going to get to that. And so
Yeah.
it really was almost a turn back the clock performance by him, by Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez, because people maybe forget in that special season they had in 2019 2020 when they did win the title, that was the center back pairing mostly.
Mhm.
It was those two, and they had a historic um, record when it came to not conceding. At least that first half of the season before January, they were
Man.
beating like Mourinho's Chelsea. They were on that pace at least, and so I think that was really big. But unfortunately, all of my happy buzz couldn't really last the whole game because of what happened with Jota, and losing him on the back of losing Diaz is really no good. So I
Mhm.
do worry about that, and I also do worry that not just the players and the atmosphere was incredible that day too. But it hasn't necessarily been that way in a lot of Anfield games this season, and I do kind of worry like everyone was just hyped up because it's City, but you've got West
Mhm.
Ham in a day. West Ham could well with Skamaka could do some things, and so that's a scary game to me. And so you don't want this to just be a one-off, but
Right.
there is that kind of fear for me as well. But we'll see. We'll see if the formation change uh, is a positive for me at least because that's been a big worry. I didn't feel like they had the squad to play the kind of style that they played in the past few years. It looks like Klopp's finally kind of realized that too.
Mhm. Question for you though, real quick: would this now be the perfect time to kind of play Alexander Arnold as a a wide player and not a fullback?
Yes. Well,
I think so too.
maybe not versus West Ham, because
Mhm.
if Kanate is not back, you only have Joe. The only person after him, I think, is Nat Phillips as far as availability. So you might have to play Joe Gomez again at center back. Um, and so Joe Gomez was fantastic versus City, but again, he got caught at versus Napoli. I do see him as actually a better right back going forward. As far as in a couple of weeks, that would be what I would like to see. I would like to see Gomez and then Trent in front of him. I think,
Mhm.
especially in a 4-4-2, or some kind of variation of a 4-2-3-1 kind of like hybrid thing. I mean, Trent was already basically doing that anyways, and
Yeah.
this would be less defensive duties. He would just have
Mhm.
to track back a little bit in midfield.
And play to
So
his strengths because he's
I
a
think so
very
too.
good like attacking kind of minded player, and we've seen that jump from fullback to midfield. Bale did it. He was a fullback, and then came out to winger because he was so good
Hmm,
on the ball.
good
So
call.
yeah, I think that could work potentially.
And honestly, I feel like that's almost always been in the cards. I mean, when Klopp was even doing this 4-3-3, even when Trent was like 19, people saw him as maybe being like their De Bruyne equivalent when he became 25 or 26. So
Mhm.
it's kind of fast forward the progress a little bit, but I do think it, it's kind of insane to play him as this fullback that has to do everything because one, that's got to be really, really draining. But two, it's really hard to be consistent that way. And we've seen, anytime he's not, putting a 10 out of 10 performances, English media really go after him in a weird
They
way
do.
that they
They
don't
really
do for
do.
anyone else. Like Cancelo had a shocker. Cancelo, I think, is significantly overrated, at least when it comes to his defending. But
Mhm.
because City don't really have to do that often, he gets praised in a weird way. Like it's almost like a hipster thing to be like to like praise Cancelo because he's not English. I don't really know what it is. Or like people will go to like Reece James because he's better defensively, but he's not better on the ball. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, so the XG was Liverpool 2.7, Man City was under one. Liverpool, City did have more shots and more shots on target. But and I think six shots of those were blocked. So Liverpool were defending deep. Liverpool only 37% possession, and City were they were doing Man City things. They were kicking the ball around for 616 passes. But one thing that's interesting about that is you have to get the first goal to play that way. Otherwise, teams are not going to care if you knock it around a little bit. When City score
Mhm.
first, that's when they can really kill games because they can just knock it in circles and kill your legs. And City weren't really able to do that this game. Another thing too is what I really want to touch on is uh, I think you saw the big difference for them missing three defenders in Kyle Walker, Emerick Laporte, and John Stones. First kind of
Mhm.
three that they played. Now that hasn't necessarily shown up in other games, but in this game it did. Nathan
Mhm.
Ake just was basically he seemed to be like Harvey Elliott's like trigger to basically run at him whenever he got the ball, and Ake did not do a good job. Um,
Mhm.
and a couple players I want to highlight for Liverpool is Harvey Elliott and Jota. Jota was amazing in this game. I think it's possibly the best performance he's maybe played in a Liverpool shirt. So it is gutting to see that basically ended up kind of getting to him with this injury. But he won 8 duels, more than any other player, and basically 4 key passes. And he possibly could have had 2 tap-ins for goals if teammates had looked for him. He was everywhere, and I think the way that he Robinson and Thiago were just pretty much everywhere on that side. They locked down that right side where Cancelo and Kevin De Bruyne were almost useless, and that's
Mhm.
something we just normally don't see out of City. And so Pep played Cancelo on a different part of the field, and Cancelo one that took Cancelo away from James Milner, but two that put him on Jota and Robertson, and it didn't work in their favor as well. So I think that kind of showed up as well.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's Pep trying to exploit a mismatch, maybe.
I
Switch sides.
I really do think it was either Pep himself or Cancelo maybe even whispered it to him in the midweek. He did not want to be 1v1 on Salah's side. And so
Mhm.
one thing that's kind of funny about that is Salah played in the middle anyways. Salah wasn't on the right.
Yeah.
So as far as the Liverpool takes, I mean it is it's very very encouraging to see the possession change or the formation change because it's a 4-2-3-1 in possession. It's almost like a 4-4-2 block out of possession, and in a weird way, I was worried that they weren't be able to, doing this. It was going to struggle, or they were going to struggle without the ball. But
Mhm.
if you don't really worry about having to win the ball back, you can just sit in a block, and that actually frustrates teams too. And that's basically what happened. City were not able to play through it in a way that they have in the past, and it was a different kind of a ball or style that we've seen from Klopp, and so let's that's kind of setting up the game. Let's talk a little bit about I guess like the debate topics or kind of open up for discussion. On Liverpool's side, did you see what Klopp said before the game? Because apparently it rattled some City players. City players made some comments. They after the press that they didn't like that, and so it was maybe a genius move by Klopp. But he got the
Mhm.
focus off basically Liverpool's form, got the focus off Trent stuff and Salah stuff, and basically said three clubs can spend whatever they want. He talked about the finances. I guess he was asked why is City so much further ahead than you, and he said City were already the best team in the world, and they were able to go get the best striker in the world and give him $1 million in wages a week. Just
Mhm.
no one else is able to do that. And honestly, I think he's got a pretty good point. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming he's talking about City, Chelsea, and Arsenal are the three probably.
No,
And yeah,
no.
he does have.
I think it was
Oh,
City, PSG. It was the state-owned clubs. So like
oh, it
City,
wasn't.
PSG.
Oh,
It might have been
okay.
Newcastle, not even Real Madrid.
Oh, so it wasn't EPL. It was global. Okay, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of cheeky because it is kind of like a dig at the owners for Liverpool, and he's kind of like, without actually saying it, he's kind of being like, hey, look at these other teams. If you want us to compete, we've got to be able to spend some money and bring in some players. And I know you always talk about it. They haven't really spent that much after they kind of splurged on Allison and Van Dyke. They haven't really spent that much. So it's kind of like a subtle dig by Klopp to the owners, like saying, hey, we need some reinforcements, especially again if you want us to compete, in the Champions League and you want us to compete in the Premier League every year like City do, we need some money. But he was very diplomatic to not actually like talk about his ownership group or anything like that. So it's kind of like a subtle dig or being like, hey, spend money for us, but without actually saying it, really, which is kind of smart. And then, like you said, yeah, it kind of just takes the pressure off Liverpool a little bit more, puts it on City some
I think
because
so.
like
Yeah.
we point out that they do have the top class players, and maybe those players are like, hey, we got to perform then, because he's calling us out on how much we cost. We have to be able to back that up, back that price point up.
Well, this is apparently this is a way to maybe get at them. And what's funny is Klopp seems to have a good way to get into Pep's head. Um, but I remember, I think you can still find it on Twitter. One of City's city, it wasn't City's like owner, but it was like maybe one of the guys like Pep has to listen to, like one of the other guys
Mm.
in the ladder. He did a interview with Sky Sports, and he said, "Who has the most expensive goalkeeper in the transfer?" And he said Liverpool. Most expensive defender, and he mentioned Van Dijk. And so it is interesting how that is able to get a rattling out of them. What's funny is Liverpool did spend basically 130 million combined. Uh, for Allison and Virgil van Dijk, but they did that by selling Coutinho. It's not they aren't able to do the same things. One of my issues is at least have a higher net spend than Bournemouth. I honestly think they were 20th. They were last in the league last season for net spend. They got Darwin Nunes and they got him by selling Mane and a couple role players. It's
Mhm.
just maybe it's just me, but I feel like if you're an owner, you would want to protect your investment. The best way to protect your investment is to stay in Champions League. Now,
Mhm.
this is maybe a reason why a lot of these clubs wanted to do the Super League thing because maybe they wouldn't have had to worry about this ever again. But if Liverpool do not spend in January, I do think they're going to have some issues, especially now. I mean, the squad is thin already. Even with this change in lineup, no Jota or Diaz. Those are two of your best options for that left side. It's going to take some tweaking around still, and there are a lot of
Mhm.
games between now and Qatar, and then even after that, from Boxing Day, the schedule gets quick, gets started pretty. Basically, every week from this point on, it's going to be 2 games a week,
Mhm.
whether it's Champions
Yeah.
League or in the league. And
Mhm.
so the games names come in thick and fast. You need to have a strong squad for that. But you know,
Definitely.
one thing I did want to say is a few weeks ago we talked a little bit about this idea of a transition year for Liverpool, and we both kind of disagreed a little bit. I've started to come around to maybe changing my mind on this because if they are legitimately going to change shape, they are transitioning from an old system to a new one, and so that is change. And so you can maybe still get something out of this cycle, but again, given the injury issues, it's a kind of a mission mash. I do think that Harvey Elliott
Yeah.
and Fabio Cavallo work better as inside wingers than necessarily midfielders. I think it's easier for them to play higher up field. Maybe it's even easier defensively to just kind of press high than to track runners in midfield, which they
Yeah.
weren't doing. Curtis Jones could be
Yeah.
back. I think he could be an option for left wing if he can finally get fit. Maybe Oxlade Chamberlain as well. So it's like there are a lot of ways to make some of these role players maybe useful again with this new change. You mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold as maybe for the right side. I really do like that idea as well. And so, like I said, I started to come around to maybe buying into that. Another thing too is I would like to see this idea of transitioning to phase out Henderson somehow, or at least to not have him playing right midfield. Try to get that out of his game because that's been an issue too. And so, one last thing to kind of say is Salah was starting to be in a pretty big debate. I don't know if you kind of noticed he had maybe gone 6 games or 5 games without scoring, so people were starting
Yeah.
to kind of wonder about that. And I do think that formation or that lineup change or tweak fixed it because one thing that happened in the midweek versus Rangers is he came on in basically 70 minutes and within 6 minutes scored a hat trick.
Mhm.
And just you saw him playing a little more centrally. So, what did you think about him? And I mean, his goal, his performance.
Yeah, he had a couple chances in this one, a couple one-on-ones. Um,
Mhm.
you know, it's still tough, but yeah, I mean, honestly, midweek against Rangers, it's like the perfect situation for him because he got rested. He only played 20 minutes, but he scored 3 goals. So it was kind of I'm thinking it might kind of open the floodgates because he scored in this one on the weekend, so that's 4 goals now in 2 games. So maybe he's starting to get a little bit of confidence going. Because we all know how good he is. I thought maybe he was looking a little leggy, but maybe playing him up top will work. I don't know, but it's just great to be able to rest him midweek and still bring him on for just a little cameo and 3 goals. So I'm hoping it's something he can kind of build on, and maybe
Mhm.
now we'll kind of see the Salah from last year. Um, yeah, I mean it's going to be big too for him now with Jota and Diaz out. He's going to have to, at times carry the offense on his back. But yeah, I mean it's great because he wasn't playing like we've seen him, and now I'm hoping kind of they can kind of build on this. And it's important too that he built on this and the Liverpool build on this win more importantly. I don't know. We might be starting to see things turn around, and I think you're right. I think it's that formation change is kind of when we start to see Liverpool change a little bit and evolve. And so far, it's been really good for him to change. So I looking forward to it, and the formation will probably stay the same from now on,
I think so.
because the results are starting to come too. So
Yeah.
no reason to change it.
I mean, especially losing Jota definitely does hurt, but you can still rotate Salah, Darwin Nunes, and I think Firmino all almost in like a, if you're going to play like kind of a 4-4-2.
Mhm.
Um, One thing I do want to touch on, at least on the goal, is I hype or harp on a first touch a lot. Uh,
Mhm.
in this one, it's a little different. His first touch is really good, because it actually what he does is he angles the ball actually towards goal, and so he doesn't close off his angles. Sometimes people just kind of kick the ball ahead, not really thinking
Mhm.
about that. But his second touch after that is actually what sets up the goal because he's running full sprint. It's really easy to kick that ball too hard. Where if he would have done that, Ederson would have been able to make the save. I think.
Yeah,
So
true.
the second touch was spectacular too. So for people maybe I don't know anyone young or whatever that's still like trying or that's still able to play, try to keep that in mind. It's not just the first touch; it's basically the second touch after you have control when you're sprinting that matters just as much, especially in those kind of moments. And that's really what you saw. When you see something like that, you see Salah's not nervous or thinking about what people are saying about him. So that's
Mhm.
really good to see as well. And then lastly, I do want to touch a little bit on the Darwin cameo. What did you think of this? Because I'm in mixed bag right now, and I don't know. Maybe I'm looking for reasons to maybe be a little bit more hopeful. What do you got from it?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think it's just a little bit of rustiness. Maybe
Hmm,
he hasn't, he got that red card, so he missed a couple games. He hasn't played as much, so I think he played well, but the finishing product wasn't there. So for me, I think that's just an issue of lack of game time. Potentially, he's not really getting in that rhythm finishing, and it is a new league for him too. So getting in a rhythm is very important. But I think he will because you saw a lot of like positives from his performance, and he's a good player, he's very athletic. I think the finishing will come. I think with more game time,
I
the
like that.
finishing will come, and there's going to be a lot of games for him to play now with the players that we talked about being out. So
Yeah,
he's another one that's going to have to step up.
I think
And
so
I
too.
think once you see him settle down and that rustiness, kind of the finishing, like with rustiness, a lot like the finishing is the last thing to come back, at times, just because it's so hard to finish.
Hmm.
But I think he's going to play more, and you're going to see him score more. I think, and he can provide as well. And he's kind of a big target guy. So I think he'll play well. I think having players out will benefit him. He's going to play a lot. So
And it seems just whenever he plays, he creates chances. Now, whether
mm,
he means to or not, I mean, he's got a pretty good shot on him. He definitely seems to. Whenever he gets the ball near the box, he wants to shoot. That
mm,
that normally drives me crazy, but sometimes it works. It worked versus Rangers. So I do kind of agree with you. I mean, people are going to compare him to Holland, so I mean that's not really fair.
mm,
But before the City game, he was almost. I think he was on. 2 goals basically in for his last 3 games, and he was starting to get chance after chance. And
mm,
so that is something I do think is positive. His runs alone, I think add to the squad. So as you said, it's going to be important to see him step up as well. I mean,
mm.
he could maybe be an option to play left wing in this instead of playing
That'd
as
be
striker.
interesting.
But I don't. Well, he used to at Benfica. He was 4-4-2. He played the left wing striker of the 4-4-2.
Mm,
But yeah, but
interesting.
to focus on a little bit on City, it was interesting that Pep. Again, I mentioned how it seemed Klopp was in Pep's head a little bit. Um, when Pep was asked who he thought were his main title contenders, he didn't mention Arsenal. He mentioned Liverpool. I don't know
Mm,
if he was trying to butter Klopp up or not, but it was. I thought that was a surprising answer. And then
yeah.
uh, I don't know. I'm curious to see if you have any thoughts on. Do you think a City were maybe too Holland centric this game, and two, why do you think that Pep actually moved Cancelo on the different side or switched formations, went to a back three?
I don't. I think the back three. I really don't. It just didn't make that much sense. But I think because it's hindsight's 2020. But I think just Gundogan, De Bruyne, Silva, Rodri, always being pressured and closed down with no time and space. I think I would have kind of gone Foden high up, and then try to get the space out wide at least. And then also, what was weird was Pep didn't change anything really. I would have thought maybe he would have brought in Grealish and played him wide, or maybe Mares and played him
It's a
wide.
very good call.
I
Yeah.
don't know. He just didn't. He didn't really exploit the wide areas, which I thought he would, especially if you're kind of going to shut down the middle of the pitch. You know, I don't know. It was weird to not see those subs made. I thought maybe Mars could possibly threaten Liverpool in the second half or Grealish out wide, and they could try to attack from there. But yeah, I think they were maybe a little bit too Holland centric, and the last couple games as well. Um, I don't know, but it was just a really great job, I think, for Liverpool to kind of just manage the game, and like you said, just keeping City off the score sheet as long as you possibly can. You're always going to have a chance to counter and score, or just to grind out like a result. But yeah, maybe a little too Holland centric. I don't. I think the lineup change maybe he thought I could get Cancelo going up against Jota and Robertson and kind of exploit a weakness there offensively with Cancelo. I don't know. And then also, obviously they are hurting for defenders. Akanji has been forced to play. He's not playing too bad. This wasn't the best game for him, but he was basically immediately inserted into the lineup from Dortmund. Really, no time to settle in the squad. So maybe it's also going to the back three because we need, some other defensive options with players hurt. So I don't know, but I would not want to be a City player with a whole week
Oh
for
no.
Pep to run them, and but also I wouldn't want to be the team playing City on the weekend. It was going to be
Was
Arsenal
gonna be
midweek.
Arsenal.
That would have
Yeah.
been, yeah, that would have been terrible to run into a very angry Pep and City and an angry Holland. So yeah, I mean, I would expect him to come out and just pummel. I don't even know who they're playing this weekend, but they're probably going to come out and pummel them. I would think.
Yeah, and like they're going to be angry for another reason too, because they did score the first goal, but it was overturned by the ref. After VAR recommended a different look. Um, I mean, I was actually in real time. I thought it was actually going to stand. What did you think of the decision? Did you agree with the ref?
And that was a tough one. I guess I would agree with the ref there, just because I was so unsure myself that I just kind of sided with the ref, which is kind of weird too. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the ref got it right. I don't know. I'm kind of anti-ref, so I don't want to like spin anti-ref stuff here. But so I'll go with the ref on this one. I don't know. What did you think?
I mean, he is pulling, but again, the reason why I thought it was going to stand is VAR isn't like some like supercomputer. The VAR is just a recommendation, and then the ref
Mhm.
that's on the ground is the one that makes the decision. Hey, did I
Right.
mess up my call or not? And he had been
Mhm.
refing the game basically in that manner. He'd been letting that stuff go all game. So there's a foul on Fabinho. That's what they really looked at. But apparently the FA said that even if Anthony Taylor,
Anthony
that's his
Taylor.
name,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if he decided that was okay, there was a foul on Allison that they would have recommended to look at as well.
Ooh.
That they said so. It shouldn't have stand for two reasons. So I think that's something I actually haven't heard in a lot of commentary, or at least online. So, and that is a statement
Yeah.
that the FA has made. So I just wanted to get that out there. Um,
Okay. Okay. I like that explanation. I mean,
yep.
that makes sense.
And so that's pretty much it. The playing James Milner experiment worked out for a change, and Henderson not starting, I'm always okay with that. Though I think we'll probably see him
Yeah.
versus West Ham.
Yeah, unfortunately. But I agree with you. Yeah, it's kind of time to phase them out. It doesn't mean just like completely stop playing them, but yeah, like bring them on off the bench. Don't These guys are like 35 plus. They can't start. I mean, they can't they maybe once in a while they can start, but they're old. I mean, they're old. I can't imagine playing like we're 35. I can't imagine playing. Like I wouldn't be able to walk the next day, I feel like.
Well, another thing, it was a cheeky stat. I still don't know if it's actually legit, but like some like Liverpool like stats nerd I follow on Twitter, basically looked down at every goal that they've conceded this year, and he actually like calculated, and he said like 98% of them have been responsible, have been because of either Trent Alexander-Arnold making a mistake or Henderson. And so
Mm.
the game that they looked the best in, neither of them played, or Trent didn't play right back, and
Right.
Henderson didn't start. And
Mhm.
so
That's not a coincidence.
maybe
Yeah.
there's something to that, and maybe not.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we'll see going forward. Anyway,
Interesting.
that's that that's the show that I spent 30 minutes talking about Liverpool. Sorry, Rex, but here's your chance, because Arsenal versus
Ugh.
Leeds was also pretty exciting and also a pretty big result for you guys. Um,
Yeah. Ugh. Not a great performance, I'll tell you. The last two games, because I watched Thursday in the Europa League. I mean, it was in Norway at Bodo Glimt, but a 1-0 game there, and they just didn't look that good. They didn't necessarily look that good in this one either. A lot of luck too. We had Ben White missed a PK. There could have been another PK called on Gabriel. I mean, really, we just didn't play particularly great. But it was nice to see them kind of get a clean sheet, obviously, and just be able to kind of grind out a result, especially after being 1-0 up. They kind of sat back a little bit, and
yeah,
really Leeds took it to them in the second half. They had to have, a Ramsdale save, a couple really good blocks by the defenders. So I wasn't really impressed by Arsenal in this game,
hmm
but there's some good things to take away. I mean, teams that are going to compete for the title, they've got to get a little bit of luck at times, and they certainly Arsenal certainly got the luck with the Bamford missed PK and a couple other really good saves to kind of get the 3 points in the bag. But the other thing too is just being able to grind out results when you're not playing well. And the
yes,
last two games they've gotten 1-0 results, and they really haven't played well at all. But I don't necessarily feel happy saying that, because if they continue to kind of play this way, they're going to lose. They got PSV Thursday, and if they play like they've played the last two games, Gakpo is going to destroy them.
and Gakpo's looked
You
really
know,
good the last couple of games for him.
so having said that, that you have to be able to win games when you're not playing well. They also have to kind of turn the switch and play well, because you do see really good teams like City will maybe drop a game, but after that they're right back on it, and they're on like a long winning streak after that. So I'm just kind of hoping that we kind of don't play this way Thursday, because I think we'll lose. And I don't know. Maybe it's we're getting leggy. That's a long trip midweek to the Arctic Circle for sure. Um, but I don't know. I mean, we've been able to rotate the squad pretty well. You think they'd be able to kind of play a little bit better, but also Leeds Ellen Road is kind of a fortress, not an easy place to play.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I'm kind of I don't know if Arsenal fans are really feeling like me, but I'm kind of I'm worried on one hand, and then the other hand, I'm like, well, hey, getting wins when we're not playing that well is great, but we do need to see this form change. I think, if especially if they want to compete for the title with City. If they play like this against PSV, then they're going to lose. If they play like this against City, they're going to lose. So hopefully they can change things around. But it was a big result, and clean sheets are hard to come by for us. So that was good too. And I don't know, Saliba looked good. Gabriel got some of the stick from the fans, but Gabriel's really good too. So I was kind of disappointed to see the fans
I
kind
thought
of
I
on
thought
Twitter hating on Gabriel.
Gabriel had a good game in this one, and no, I've
Yeah.
actually been one of the people that's been kind of ragging him in recent
Mm.
games. He maybe saved you guys, and actually in this game, some of the
Well,
blocks he had.
he has made some mistakes, but I think also playing next to Saliba, and Saliba's so good and calm. I think he just doesn't look quite as good as Saliba. But remember last year, like Gabriel was our top center back. He's a really good center back,
Yeah,
and that's a really good pairing. So I think sometimes he just doesn't look as good as Saliba, and that's why he kind of gets some of the stick. And he has been a little foully in and around the box. But yeah, he's a good center back too. So Arsenal fans, keep that in mind. Come on, because if it's not Gabriel, who is it holding? He's played well in cameos and in Europa, but he's not as good as Gabriel.
well, I wonder if eventually, if you do try to play Ben White as a center back instead of what they're doing here, or I guess because I think I mentioned how they played four center backs basically versus Liverpool, and that worked out. Versus Liverpool, but Liverpool were not able to press the way that Leeds were. It's kind of crazy to say that, but I think that's accurate. And
Mm.
one thing that I notice is, again, it's one of those times where I do think you guys severely downgraded from Zinchenko to Tamiyasu.
Mhm.
I thought he was like Brendan Aronson was like licking his chops anytime Tomiyasu was getting on the ball, because he was
Yeah.
pressing him high and trying to get him to turn over. Arsenal weren't able to keep the ball like they were versus Liverpool in that second half. I think you saw that as well. I mean,
Mhm.
the stats were really jarring. I mean, had 16 shots, only four on
Yeah.
target. Arsenal 9 shots, and likewise four on target. But most
Mhm.
of that actually did come in the first half. Arsenal were kind of on their heels, I
Yeah.
thought. So I agree with you. I thought you can look at this two ways, that they're able to get a result, and it showed some grit. It's similar to what they did in the first game of the season versus Crystal Palace. In a way
Mhm.
to Ellen Road is not an easy place to play, so to just get 3 points,
Yeah.
that no injuries as well. I think so that's positive by itself. I do
Yeah.
kind of look at this sometimes as where the way you guys do play Gabriel Jesus sometimes he is almost isolated. And so again, I would be curious to see if there would be a way to play Jesus and Eddie and Nketiah at the same time, but that would
Mhm.
probably take you that would probably cause you to take out Odegaard or someone like
Yeah.
that. And Odegaard had the assist to Saka,
Mhm.
so I don't, and I
It's
think
happened
he's maybe a captain.
before, but yeah, and it's happened before, but it was basically I think like Martinelli was taken out, and Kitty was put in, and kind of Jesus was kind of on the left wing. It wasn't necessarily like two strikers, so they just kind of they played them together, but they kind of moved Jesus out wide, and Nketiah was the only guy up top. So yeah, I mean that would be interesting. It could just throw another wrinkle in. It's another formation that Arteta could employ potentially. But then also Ben, I don't know. To your point about Ben White, if Tomiyasu's playing well and Zinchenko comes back, does he have Zinchenko at left back, and does he take Ben White out and put Tomiyasu at right back, or maybe now it just has, he has the ability to play Ben White at center back and just rest his center backs and not necessarily play there full time,
So,
just play there when Saliba needs a game off or
so,
something like that.
so I think
It's just another wrinkle.
Sinchenko makes the formation almost completely change when you have the ball, because it almost is a back three, and so Ben White can basically slot in, and sometimes he can offer overlap runs, but maybe not. But Zinchenko is basically playing in midfield when he plays. He's not
Yeah.
really a fullback, um, and he just offers you something. I think you keep the ball more with him too. He controls tempo, where
Yeah.
Tomiyasu is not able to do that. And I think where you guys really struggled with is you weren't able to tire Leeds' legs out. And the more and more Leeds got chances, it seemed like the crowd gave him energy as well. Um,
Mhm.
to focus a little bit, actually, no, we'll stick on Arsenal. Um, one thing I wanted to maybe bring up with you is because Andrew was actually here on the weekend, and actually brought this up with him, and he had an interesting answer. So I wanted to see what you had to say.
Ooh.
Is if you do a hypothetical, um, let's say Arsenal get fourth last year over Spurs, they're able to attract other players for Champions League. I don't think they're able to. This is my opinion, but I'll see what you think. I don't think Pep gives them Gabriel Jesus or Zinchenko,
Ooh.
because he would have been given a Champions League contender, two of his players.
Mhm.
What do you maybe think of that, or am I just that's just nonsense?
Oh, that's a good point, Ben. I didn't really think about that. I think I think maybe you might see like one of them go to Arsenal, but yeah, probably not both. I mean, I think too Pep kind of just wanted to refresh things because, not that Jesus and Zinchenko were complacent, but, always winning and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
playing in Pep's formation, sometimes you do need to kind of change things and get people out of there. But yet, I mean, that's a good point. I just don't know. I think maybe one would go, maybe like Zinchenko or Jesus, but not both. I don't know. It depends on two. Were other clubs interested in these people
I
and
imagine
were
there
willing to pay the same
I
price?
imagine there would have been
Yeah.
other suitors,
Oh
because
yeah. I
it's
would
not like
think.
City hurt for finances. It was just
Mhm.
something I was thinking in my head. Um,
And then,
so
well, part of the Zinchenko thing too was when they got rid of him. I was like almost 90% sure that they were going to get Cucurella, and that didn't happen. So, maybe it was a little bit of that too. Maybe like, well, we're going to get Cucurella and upgrade. so we can get rid of Zinchenko, and it doesn't really matter where he goes. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's true.
an interesting point, Ben.
And so, I mean, to quickly focus a little bit on Leeds, you know, I think one of the reasons why they looked a lot better in that second half is Bamford came on and he had one of these performances where maybe it's similar to what Darwin Nunes did. He did great in everything but the final product.
Mm,
I actually looked, and he's only started in 3 games this season because
mm,
he had an injury to start the season as well. He's
mm.
already missed 8 chances, more than anyone else.
Ooh,
So he's getting chances, but he's not putting them away. I'm curious if it's maybe just a confidence thing that maybe a
could
run
be.
of games will get him into shape. But
Mm,
he looked really good. I thought he was good pressing the ball. He was getting in good situations, good running, good making runs, and again, just he was taking maybe too long to make a decision when he was in the box, or the PK that he missed
mm.
was I think that was a sign of just low confidence. But what did you think of his performance?
Yeah, I mean, he was really threatening. Obviously, I was very worried because, like you said, we didn't control the game. So, like, we might have been a little tired, and then you take off Rodrigo, and then bring in Bamford. I was definitely scared about that. But yeah, I think it's kind of like the Nunez thing with Bamford. I think it's just confidence issue from not playing, and it's a little bit of rustiness in front of the net from not playing as well. And I think the more he plays, the more confidence he'll get, and he'll kind of shake that rust off, and I think he'll start popping in goals for him. But the key to him is he's got to be healthy. So you might see him kind of you know be either subbed in or subbed out early, kind of manage his minutes until he can put together a run of games and not get hurt. But I thought Sinistera also was starting to play well. He had a couple
Mhm.
really good
Definitely.
shots, and then obviously Aronson was his usual, just running all over the place. He was threatening too. So I felt, I mean, I was very happy as an Arsenal fan, but I felt kind of bad for Leeds because honestly, they deserve something from this game. They probably deserved all 3 points, but they at least deserved a draw. So I think there's a lot of positives. Having Bamford back and creating chances, I think he will eventually start to score if he can stay healthy, and that'll just help everyone else. Sinistera has, I mean, he got that red card, so he hasn't necessarily played a bunch either. So there's a lot of potential with this Leeds team, and I enjoy watching them because of Adams and Aronson.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of positives to take from this, and I mean they deserved at least a point, probably all three. They were very unlucky,
Yeah,
and Arsenal were lucky,
I mean,
and that was the difference.
I mean, to touch on that, we didn't even touch on the goal. I mean, it's a great
Mhm.
finish by Saka, but the problem is it comes from a mistake from Rodrigo.
Yeah,
Rodrigo
yeah,
is try a really speculative cross switch ball,
crossfield path. Yeah,
and he mishits it, and the defender can't do anything with it, and it goes to Saka. Saka gets it to Odegaard, and Odegaard feeds Saka through. At the same time, Saka he doesn't have the best angle towards goal, and
yeah,
he just roofs it um, over Melia. But you know, you miss a PK as well, and the number of chances that I saw Leeds creating. I agree. I do think they were unlucky not to at least come away with something. They Bamford even scored in this game, but it was called off for a foul. So
mhm,
you can mention that as well. I mean,
yeah. More luck.
I didn't look at the XG, but I imagine it was at least even, if not Leeds had a better go of it. Yeah, Leeds 1.6 and
Yeah.
1.86, and then Arsenal under one.
Ooh. It's also too. It's interesting that you do mention the Saka like tight angle. I saw on Twitter someone had posted a like coaching session from Arsenal. I think it was probably like last year or maybe like earlier in the year this season. But he's basically with the strikers and he's saying, "Hey, if you have this bad angle, there's only two things you can do: shoot really high or cross it into the box." And you saw Saka shoot it really high and it worked. So just good tactical instruction, and
That's a
the
nice little
players are
tidbit.
kind of bought in. Yeah, yeah, it was interesting. I mean, you would think that that would kind of be the case at this high level. They should know that from tight angles, you should probably just cross it back into the box, um, or go high. But it's nice to see them kind of like listening to Arteta, and it just builds confidence too because Saka listens to Arteta, and it benefits Saka too. So it's just more developing like the bonds between coaches and players as well. So it was good to see. Yeah, it's a nice little tidbit. Twitter's a great place, man. It can be a terrible place, but it's a great place too for like soccer tidbits.
I mean, great weekend, or just week in general for Saka as well.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, he's starting to heat up. So
you think about the PK he was able to score versus Liverpool last week, and
mhm.
so I think we kind of in the same boat where we're pretty hopeful. Maybe for Leeds, we like what we've seen, but
Yeah,
at the same time, I do think they need to start getting more points. They have
they do.
Fulham this week, and then Liverpool on the weekend. So
Ooh.
maybe some chance for points there. We'll see.
Yeah,
And then
and their last five has have not been good. They've only picked up 2 points. The schedule has been harder on them though. So I don't know. Yeah, they're still in the. I mean, they're 15th. They're in a decent place, but like you said, they got to get some wins soon.
yep. All right, and we'll move on to Everton, and let's see how we're probably not doing great for time. Oh,
I don't
not
think
at
so.
all. No, no, no. Sorry. All right, we'll go on to Everton and Spurs. This one ends basically Tottenham wins 2-0. Um, the one like I guess headline was Richarlison getting hurt, but goals from Harry Kane from a PK, and then Højbjerg was able to get a second one to kind of wrap things up at the end. Um, the it, the stats say that Spurs kind of dominated this game with 21 shots and 7 on target. I actually did watch this live, and I didn't think that. It didn't feel that way, at least on the eye. I thought maybe the two best chances in the game they were evident. So Demore Gray was in on goal, and he hit it over the bar. And then Onana was almost in kind of a similar situation in the 40th minute. So the first half, Everton had the chance to maybe take the lead here. But the problem is like once you give away, and also on the Harry Kane PK, it's a Pickford spill. It's
Mhm.
kind of a nothing shot. If Pickford just kind of catches it, obviously there's no reason for the ball to bounce out to Harry Kane to where he brings him down, and so you guilty of your own downfall in a way. And once Spurs got up a goal, it feels like you back fewer teams to see it out. To be honest,
Oh yeah.
we've talked about the way they play. Um, Anyways, what were your thoughts, Rex?
Yeah, good point on the goal because Everton were set up defensively. So once they go behind, you kind of got to throw all that out the window because you got to score to get a result.
Yeah, they played back
So
five.
yeah, back five, and then kind of defensive mid heavy too in the midfield with Gay and Onana, and only really Mape, Gray, and Awobi are kind of your attacking players. But I do think that Everton kind of hung in there. The scoreline, like you said, is kind of misleading.
Hmm.
I do think kind of maybe a draw, but I do think Tottenham kind of deserved a point. I mean, 3 points, but it looked kind of destined for either a 0-0 or a 1-0. So I think Everton will take a lot of positives from it. But yeah, the Pickford's funny because they do kind of live and die by Pickford. It seems like when they win, he's making ridiculous saves, and when they lose, he might be making a mistake or two. So that's
Oh
kind of
no.
funny too. Yeah. But yeah, there's some positive things for Everton. Dominic Calvert-Lewin was off the bench too, so it seems like maybe he can kind of start to play and not get injured, which is great because they do need some. They need
do,
some goal scorers.
do you think he was on a
And James
minutes?
Garner too is playing.
Do you think he was
Yeah,
on
he
a
must
minutes
be.
restriction? It was surprising he
Yeah, he
didn't
must
start.
be. Yeah, I think they're just very worried about him. Because he's been how has it been 2 seasons or three that he's been injured at least. For a couple months, probably two, I think the last 2 seasons. So
Yeah.
yeah, they need to kind of take him easy for sure until he can start playing some minutes and not getting hurt. But yeah, some positives to take from it. I thought it was kind of like you said, misleading scoreline.
Hmm. I mean, quietly, Spurs are tied with Man City on points. At
Hmm
23, and when you think about fewer, like we said, you back fewer teams to see out results. If they can get that goal lead, should we look at Spurs maybe or think of Spurs a little differently than what we've done? Because I think kind of like I have, we've kind of maybe penciled them in as being one of the four. Um, but the way the World Cup is, maybe things can get crazy here. You know, you don't necessarily know if they have the depth. We've kind of talked about that, but they are third in goals. So we talked about how sometimes they play, not the best stuff on the eye. Football games aren't won by you aren't graded on points when it comes
Mhm.
to like being pretty on the eye. It just matters in moments, and they're getting
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah, and their defense has been solid. They're tied for second with 10 goals conceded, and that's Arsenal, City, Chelsea, all the big boys. And we've talked about too. We don't think their defense is that great, but Conte has kind of turned those defenders into really solid players. Dyer and Romero, and I mean Davies was in this one, so it's a really good job by Conte. I do think they'll kind of be in and around the title discussion potentially, but I think eventually they just don't have enough attacking power to probably challenge for the title.
Mhm.
But then again, I mean, they've only scored two less than Arsenal, so maybe Arsenal doesn't either. I don't know. They're a tricky team, but they are very solid defensively. And Conte's done a lot, I feel like, with not too much in terms of defensive players. So I mean, it's good to see. We know Conte's an Italian, so they pride themselves on good defense, and that's always going to make Tottenham hard to beat.
I mean, I'm starting to wonder if it's maybe it. We haven't gotten there yet, but maybe we'll get to a point where it becomes almost like COVID football, where like because of the way that the game congestion is going to come, teams that try to win by outrunning you or outpressing you, they're going to be really hurt by this. Teams that are fine with just playing without the ball and just sitting back and defending, maybe in a weird way, that will benefit you a little bit. I
Yeah.
mean, Man City don't necessarily have to. eh, Sometimes when you watch their games, they can press like mad to try to win the ball back as immediately as possible, or they can just let other teams have it, and expecting they're gonna lose it. Like City can walk in
Mhm.
games as well. Pep's learned to do
Yeah.
that. So that'll maybe be something to watch. Them being 12th in ball possession, I thought was a surprising stat when I saw that.
Mhm.
And they're outside the top four for accurate passes in a game when they were
Ooh.
where they were closer to three or four last season. So um,
Hmm.
and it feels like they are reliant on Kane and Son again, and losing
Yeah.
Richarlison, they've lost Kulishevsky to injury as well. So those are maybe the issues for Spurs. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I keep trying to write them off, and unfortunately, no one else has been able to knock them out. So I feel like they do have to be in the discussion at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they've just been really good defensively. It's always hard to beat them. If they only lost the one to Arsenal, is that the only loss?
I didn't
I
think
think it
about that, but
is.
maybe.
Yeah, it is. They've one loss since to Arsenal, so it's kind of crazy at the top of the table. Newcastle too. We have four teams with only one loss: Arsenal, City, Tottenham, and Newcastle. It's kind of crazy. And
Yeah,
then we have
the New
Chelsea with only two losses.
and the Newcastle loss came at basically like the 99th minute
That's right.
at Anfield. It's
There's
actually
a
good
lot of
good
parity.
good segue because we'll move on to Man United and Newcastle. I tried to hype this up last week as like a
Mm,
must watch game, and I
mhm.
immediately switched it midway to Classico because this was awful.
Yeah.
It ends 0-0. The not really a ton of lineup news for Man United, although actually there was one. No Christian Eriksen. I think he was ill. And
Mm.
so you saw Casemiro and Fred, basically Brazil's midfield, you expect, and that
Yeah.
didn't necessarily work too well, at least in that first half. Um, as far as chances go, Joe Linton had basically a double header. First off the bar and then off the post, and then towards the end, Rashford was able to get around Pope, and instead of trying for an empty net, he basically tried to do like from a tight angle. He didn't do what Saka did. He tried to cut it back for Fred, and Fred hit a shot wide, and then Casemiro hit a ball into the box late last minute that Rashford did connect on, but also missed it wide. But I think maybe the big talking point was Newcastle had a penalty shout that. Again, I was with VAR. You imagine that at least gets overturned because I do think that's a ref error. Varane steps across and blocks Wilson, so I feel like Newcastle have a right to feel like they were hard done by. I mean, the shots were 15 for Man United, two. I mean, 9 for Newcastle, both on two. Under one for XG for both. It was not the prettiest game, to be honest. Newcastle with 217 passes as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't that fun of a game to watch. And United recently have, I mean, they've been getting results, but they weren't playing well against Ammonia from Cyprus on Thursday either. So, and that was another game where Ronaldo started, and Ronaldo has one goal I think so far. So, I think Martial's the lack, him being hurt, the lack of Martial is starting to hurt
100
United, and we
100%.
thought that would, yeah, we thought that'd be the case, and Ronaldo hasn't really stepped up, which is it's kind of weird to say because even last year he scored 20 plus goals. So I was kind of expecting him to step up a little bit. There's still time, but yeah, they're definitely missing Martial.
I mean, one thing I'm noticing is you're playing now. I get why they went to go get Anthony because they wanted someone to basically play like an inside winger. So they wanted someone to basically inside, basically usually means someone that's going to cut on the opposite foot,
Inverted
um,
winger, yeah.
inverted, right? The problem here is you're starting to kind of see like the solid problem where he wants to cut on to his left foot all the time. So good defenders kind of know
Mm,
that, and so Anthony is never going to go to the touchline and get a cross line. Where like that, you playing Ronaldo. Ronaldo's like one of the best headers ever, the best headers that we've seen at least the last generation. I think that's a fair comment to say.
yeah.
Ronaldo's not getting that service because Martial or Anthony has to cut on to his left foot before he can cross it in. And when he's crossing it in, he's crossing it towards the keeper. And what's
Mm,
problematic is you're seeing the same thing on Sanchez on the right side when you're
yeah.
playing on the left side when you're playing Sancho. Sancho doesn't have a left foot, and so when he gets the ball, he wants to go down the wing and then cut inside and kind of do the same ball.
Mm.
And
It's
so,
interesting that you say that too. Oh, sorry, just to cut in real quick.
mhm.
I was watching the Golasso show last week, Europa League, and they were kind of talking about how, Anthony's a good player, but they were worried that he was a bit of a one-trick pony, and that teams would find him out, and that he did kind of really have to challenge himself to change his game and work on things that he wasn't necessarily comfortable with. Otherwise, yeah, defenses would key in on what he does because he doesn't change it up. So, yeah, that's a good point.
It's like Arjen Robben like ruined this for everyone. Or I guess like Salah has found a way to like have a quite a good career by himself by being one footed as well. But it's like once defenders do kind of key on that, again, it's a matter of the timing when they cut too.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking of someone like Ronaldo that's struggling for service in a way, because Bruno's not really looking for him either now. He's kind of when Bruno gets the ball,
Mhm.
he's looking to shoot. So that's kind of been a problem as well. Like I saw a lot of analysis try to pin this on Ericsson being out, but Ericsson's been played so deep. And United didn't really have an issue getting the ball into the final third. It was after that. And so if Ericsson gets back, do you maybe try playing him in the Bruno role instead? Maybe give Bruno some
Ooh,
rest because
that's
Casemiro,
interesting.
you have Casemiro and Fred behind you now.
Yeah, and Bruno's been playing, the last 2 years. They had to have him in to get a result, so he's been playing a lot. That's a good point. Just give him a chance to take a game off and rest could mean a huge difference in his performance.
Because we saw the kind of goals, the kind of creation that Ericsson was able to provide for Tony. You imagine
Mhm.
what? Yeah, Ronaldo still has legs to run. We saw last week what he did versus Everton. So I would
Yeah.
maybe see if Ten Hag thinks about doing that at some point because I feel like in the final third was at least in this game was really where they struggled. In the past also, it's not just Martial. It maybe someone like Pogba would have helped out in this game or
Mm.
this kind of game, and it seemed,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just it was unique to see United actually not really struggle to actually control the ball. It was just after that, and then
Mhm.
defensively, they I feel like they did get lucky not getting that PK called on them. And Newcastle only able to bring on Alan Maxian as a sub. I feel like maybe if they had him to start the game, it would have been different, or Ishak
Yeah, just
as well.
another threat.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's
Uh,
we talked up
Good
Jacob
point.
Murphy a little bit last week, but he's a squad player, role player. He can
Yeah.
do something a game to game, but not consistently. And like
Mhm.
a lot of these, the reason why some people are in the starting 11 than not is because of that consistency. So
True. Shout out to Trippier too. Trippier is playing really well for Newcastle. Um, if I don't know if you have him in your EPL fantasy, but he's been getting some assists
Oh,
too.
I do.
Oh, me too. Yeah, me too. And
I do.
tons of clean sheets. He's been one of the better fantasy players for fullback for defense. So yeah, he's been doing really well too. And I think Botman's been a really good signing as well. He's
Hmm.
starting to settle down a little bit. So it's weird to see this defense doing very well because they have spent on them, but we thought maybe that was kind of their weakness if you were going to pinpoint one or lack of depth because they do kind of tend to buy more attacking players. But Trippier and Botman and Burn have been really good. They've been good signings. Who else? Target, I think, too. So they haven't bought superstars on defense necessarily, but they've bought really solid players. So it's good to see.
Yeah, I mean their defensive record I think is in top 6 or 7.
Yeah,
So
they've only given up. They've only conceded 10, so they're up there
oh,
with.
they're up there with Arsenal. They're like
Wait, hold
second,
on. It might be. Let me
second
look. It
best.
might be. No, they've
Um,
only conceded 9. They're top of the league in terms of goals conceded at only 9.
oh,
So they're
oh,
first.
well there we go.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
and they scored 17, so they could score a little bit more. But yeah, pretty damn good defensive record there.
I look at Newcastle as the kind of thinking that if they just do a little spending in January, they're probably going to jump a couple teams here. And one could be Man United. It almost feels like Man United might have to buy as well because Newcastle lack for depth. I think United lack for consistency. I think that's a good word to maybe describe them. So
Yeah, Newcastle's kind of doing that like Brighton role last year, where they've only lost one, but they've only won 3. They have 6 draws.
mhm.
So yeah, I mean they're in 6th place. So if you turn one of those draws into 3 points, they're up in the top 4. So pretty good. But find some ways to win, and they could definitely be in the top 4 at the end of the year, which is it's crazy because it's been pretty quick.
Yeah, that would not be good. That's the reason why Klopp actually brought them up
Hmm.
specifically. They get top 4. They get Champions League. We keep bringing up Mbappe and making those funny suggestions. I think Mbappe wants to go to the Premier League. I think that's something that people haven't really seen or talked about. But I think he sees what Holland's doing and getting all this praise all of a sudden. And it's just if you're at or if you're at Barcelona or Real Madrid, all the talk is still about those two clubs, not necessarily you. Or the talk will
Yeah,
be they'll compare you to what Ronaldo did or what Messi did, where
true.
you can be your own thing in the EPL. So
That'd be interesting if he if we went to Newcastle. That'd be crazy.
that clip is not, or well, only on YouTube. That probably will not age well. But anyways,
Well, if they get the top 4, though, who knows? Because they got the money now.
we'll move on to Eddie Howe managing Mbappe. We'll move on to Chelsea and Aston Villa. This one, and they do win 2-0. Not the best result of a Villa, but actually, I'll maybe be a contrarian here. I do think there were some positives here. This first game for Chelsea without Reece James, and we saw Sterling actually tried there in that wing back role in the first half, and that did not work. Potter changed things up a little bit and so moved basically Ruben Loftus-Cheek more to the wingback role. Sterling moved up for further and kind of moved Havertz or kind of moved Mount more into midfield and brought Conor Gallagher on the second half. But well, yeah, Potter did not like what happened in the first half, so he made a lot of subs immediately. Subbed off Havertz and subbed off Cucurella. But yeah, the goals came from Mason Mount, both of them. The first one was a big mistake from Tyron Mings, and that's another guy that consistency is kind of his problem. He can be great
Mhm.
one week and then just kind of howler the next. He had a mistake last week for a foul that led to goal versus Nottingham Forest, and so
Hmm.
it's just a simple header. It feels like, and he misheads it, and Mount's able to run onto it and gets the ball past Emi Martinez, and then Mount scores a really nice free kick goal. But the first foul is committed by Tyron Mings, and also Emi Martinez maybe could have done better on this free kick. He tried to move to the wall side, and Mount just kind of went opposite of that. As far as takeaways, Villa had 18 shots.
Yeah.
and 7 on target. Villa made Kepa make 5 saves in the first 30 minutes of the game, and a couple of these were like diving saves.
Mm,
They only had 283 passes. Um, Chelsea definitely dominated the ball, but they had 8 shots and 4 on target themselves. But man, I think Chelsea got away with one here.
mm. Yeah, I mean, it's a ton of shots, and I mean, usually they haven't scored Villa that much, but they went with Watkins, Ings, and Bailey, and Watkins and Ings haven't really been playing together, so he kind of went with two strikers up top. But I mean, for Villa, I think a lot of this season for them has been just they haven't finished. They haven't scored a lot at all. I think they're tied for third to last in
Hmm.
goals in the league. And then, this game perfectly encapsulated that because they had a bunch of shots and they even had a decent amount on target, but they just couldn't score. And I feel like they're really close with the talent that they have. They're really close to kind of being like a mid-table team if they could just convert some of these shots.
Definitely,
I mean,
yep.
Watkins kind of a down year, Ings kind of a down year. Maybe they'll pick things up, but I think it's at least encouraging that they're producing a lot of shots. They just kind of got to find their finishing boots, just a little piece of quality. Because if they scored first in this game, that might be something they could have packed it in and hung on to all 3 points, or at least a draw. So yeah, for them, I think it's just kind of a case of bringing their finishing boots,
I
because
mean,
they really haven't scored.
Mount had 2 goals, and I think without a doubt, Kappa was man of the match. I didn't actually
Mm,
look on that, but like to your point, they could have scored 4. I want to say in the
yeah.
first 30 minutes.
Mhm.
I mean, and speaking of Kappa, I mean, a bit of a resurgence all of a sudden under Graham Potter. He
Yeah,
seems
he's
to be
back.
maybe be the number one guy, and he's looked really good
Mhm.
for them recently. Also, and he's been playing in Champions League as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Potter too made really good decisions, at halftime. He wasn't happy. And I think it was smart to pull the trigger early. And they've been playing pretty well under Potter so far. So,
Mhm.
I think I say this with every coach Chelsea get, but I think he's kind of going to be the guy to take them, to good places, I think.
It is definitely a manager I'd feel like they haven't had at least as long as I've maybe been following the EPL, because it seems they've always tried to get quote unquote winners, like proven winners, or they've tried to get big egos, or maybe they've tried to get yeah, I said egos, like personalities. Um, but it feels like they haven't necessarily the one tactician they've had. They tried Rafa, and that didn't necessarily work for them.
Oh,
I
right.
don't think.
Yeah.
But like Potter is like a like a math. I don't say math wizard. He looks at games like purely from a tactic like standpoint. Like he changes shapes and lineups, like you saying, from from one half to the next. He likes a lot of change, and so it's going to be interesting to see if like these star players adapt to that. So far, it looks like they have, which is good.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
for us, because he likes to change things up so much, you do imagine it's going to be good for Pulisic to get some playing time with him. And Pulisic did
Yeah.
score the last time he was able to play. He didn't
Mhm.
see game time in this one, but maybe they played Brentford. I think Wednesday. Maybe we'll see him
Mhm.
versus Brentford. Um,
Yeah, I think we will. Yeah, and Potter's done in his career, he's done a really good job with, kind of very little financial backing, and now he does have financial backing. So yeah, I think he's going to be a good coach for Chelsea. But I thought Tuchel would be too. So
Another thing too is like at least like past ownership. The reason why they got all these like big personalities is because you can only listen to that for so long before players kind of turn you out. And it seems
mhm.
Potter does seem to have a bit more of a long term outlook on things. So maybe this fit with Chelsea isn't necessarily fit to last.
Mhm.
We'll have to see. If not, I do think he'll immediately be caught up again. I
Oh
talked
yeah,
about him maybe for an England job later on. I
yeah.
do think he would suit that. What did you think of how Chelsea are doing without Reece James? Because the news is really crushing for not only Chelsea, I think, also England.
Yeah, yeah. And Sterling, like you said, he did not play well. I don't know what he's really gonna do. Maybe Aspilicueta, and you just kind of go. He could go with a back four too. But yeah, It sucks. But I mean, that's what happens when you have the World Cup in the middle of the season. Some of the players that we really want to see in the World Cup are going to be hurt playing for the club, and we're not going to see them. So I don't know. Yeah, it's just disappointing, and it's really disappointing that some of these players, a lot of players we know they're going to get hurt in the World Cup, so they're going to come back, and it's going to be like a title fight, and some players are going to be out because of the World Cup too. So it's just another wrinkle in this weird season where we have the World Cup in the middle of the club football season. It's weird, and fixtures piling up. That's not going to help things either.
I mean, we saw this last year, or when Chelsea lost Reece James and basically lost Chilwell around the same time, and Tuchel was not able to deal with that. Chelsea went from basically being within a point or so with Liverpool and Man City back
Mm,
in December to being completely out of the picture. So all of a sudden, it seems like Tuchel's going to have to do kind of a similar problem or deal with a similar problem that Tuchel had last season. So we'll see
yeah,
we'll see how Potter does with that as well.
gonna be interesting.
And you know, for Villa's sake, it's rotten luck. I think for them to also lose Barbecue Kamara, so it
Mm,
forces Douglas Luiz to kind of be their lone DM. I think that forces you to play John McGinn. John McGinn's also their captain. We've talked about him too. Um, One thing I want to say is to force some of these saves. I think it's another one. We're going to have a theme here where it seems just kind of being a game consistent game time. I think will some players out of ruts. I think Ings came on; he was rusty.
mm,
So give him a run of games if he can stay fit a little bit, and maybe try playing this back three or this front three. I thought it was pretty balanced with Watkins and Bailey kind of offering a little width outside, and
mm.
then trying to find Ings inside the box. I thought it was as good as they've looked in some time because again they offered none of this versus Nottingham Forest.
Mhm.
Just on Monday, so it's not good
Yeah,
news for Coutinho to hear that because I think that forces you to not play him. But I thought they
yeah,
I thought they looked lively again. So
yeah. They're looking better and better as the season progresses.
and
Still gotta get results though.
I mean for Villa, I'm going to mention Brentford again, but they've got I end up screwing up. They've got Fulham and Brentford themselves. So a
Mm,
couple chances to maybe get some points. I think Gerard needs points.
yeah.
I saw something this morning where it does seem to be rumblings where someone someone from Pochettino's like camp or whatever said he's eyeing jobs that might interest him. So
Ooh,
if
really?
that's there's anything to that tabloid gossip or not. But yeah.
Interesting.
All right, let's move on to Southampton and West Ham. This one ends 1-1, and this is another theme where it seems a certain team is going to feel really hard done by.
Hmm.
I mean, Southampton gets first goal by Peru. Bowen's blocked from the ref, but also I think it's kind of West Ham had a chance to get the ball to clear it. Suchek has a really poor clearance, and that's kind of what leads to this. So I don't really think they have a gripe. And then Declan Rice was able to get one back 1-1 with a beautiful shot. Something we don't
Yeah.
always see from him. I mean, the stats were Southampton had 10 and 8 on target. Um, they actually played pretty well, and West Ham 25 with 4 on target, but 12 block
Mm.
shots. Southampton were defending for their lives.
Oh
So
yeah.
the one thing I wanted to say about this is we saw a bit of a lineup change or formation change from West Ham as well. Went to a back three and played Paqueta as almost like part of the front three with Skamaka and Bowen. So that was a little
Hmm.
different, and no, it worked and everything, but the end product it seemed.
Yeah, they created a boatload of shots. Um, you know, I just think I feel like Bowen. We talked about how he's starting to play into some form. I think they're starting to turn around because Bowen wasn't playing well, and Antonio was starting, and he wasn't playing well. So they got Bowen going, and then they took Antonio out and put in Skamaka, and he didn't score in this one, but he's got a nice little scoring record going too.
He looks
So there's some
good.
big calls. Yeah, there's some big calls from Moyes, and it seemed to have paid off. And a draw doesn't necessarily damage their confidence too much. But they could have won easily, just a couple more shots on target. But that happens sometimes. Maybe they just didn't bring their shooting boots today. But getting Bowen going, and if it's got to be either Antonio or Skamaka, you got to have one of those guys firing, and then Paqueta is growing into this team as well. So I think there's positive things on the horizon, and I think Moyes has kind of ridden the early season turbulence, and they're starting to figure out their identity, and they're starting to score a little bit more. Getting Bowen back into form is a huge part of that. So I think they're starting to play well, and the draw isn't necessarily a terrible result. I think he kind of keeps the string of decent results going, and they're winning in Europa League too. So that's not easy because they played Thursday and Southampton didn't. So yeah, I think they're starting to put together a nice little run. I was worried for them, and I was worried for Moyes at the beginning of the year because they were just doing terrible. But some big calls, and he seemed to kind of change things around, and
Yeah,
it's been good.
I mean, to touch on Skamaka, it's so weird for me to see Liverpool actually handle Holland pretty well. But Holland's a very different striker. It feels like all of Holland's goals have come from like the 6 yard area in the box. And Skamaka, for being as big as he is, he's almost the same size. I think he's 6'5" as well. He doesn't seem to be that kind of striker. He seems to be a guy that can actually go and get the ball in other parts, touch the ball in other parts of the field, and he seems to be able to take a shot anywhere he gets it. He got
Yeah,
he got close on a number of these from pretty far out. So it's gonna be a different test. Definitely something to maybe watch for. And
yeah,
Paqueta is starting to heat up a little bit for them. He's
hmm
creating chances, it seems, every game. And as
yeah.
far
He's a good
as
signing.
as far as Southampton, I mean, 8 shots on target is normally good to win most games. I think that's something we haven't necessarily seen. And one negative to that is, a couple of times Che Adams was actually through on goal and just could only draw a save and wasn't able to get
Mm.
anything other than that. And then I saw Bella Kotchap had to be subbed off for injury, and it looks like he dislocated his shoulder, and so he'll be
Oof.
another one that he was on the German Nations League roster, and it looks like I think I saw he's out till December, so that's World Cup for him as
Oof.
well.
Yeah, that sucks. I hate to see that.
And I mean, do you have anything left to say on Southampton?
I mean, they seem to need a striker. We talked about that last week,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, it's not a terrible result. I mean, they have Lavia has been hurt for a while, and he was playing really well.
Yeah.
So they tend to deal with setbacks pretty well. Usually too, they've lost some like 7-0 games, and have kind of dealt with that setback too, and have kind of gone on to stay in the Prem. So I think they'll stay in the Prem. I think this is a good result for them too, especially because they got outshot badly. But they've got a decent amount of young players, and I feel like they're just maybe they're a solid striker away from kind of getting out of that perennial relegation zone, and maybe kind of moving into the middle of the table potentially. But it always feels like they're like that because they had Broja last year on loan, and he was potentially the guy, and they lost him. So I just wonder, maybe like Ward Prowse leaves in the summer. They just always seem to like have setbacks that stop them from building this club up.
Personally,
But it's a good job just to stay.
I think it's finally time for him to move on. To be honest, it feel at least for City last week, I thought he was maybe at fault for a couple of these goals. I thought he was maybe running haphazardly, to be honest. But one thing to quickly stick with Southampton, and then we can move on. Is did you notice who they're playing in the middle of the field without Roman Lavia? Uh,
Yeah, Maitland Niles.
maybe a name you recognize. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and he didn't play that great at first, but he was pretty solid in this game. So maybe he just needed time to settle down. And he's another player that didn't play too much, so he's kind of shaking off the rust as well. But yeah, it was good to see him playing solidly and handling that midfield. With El Nusi and Ward Prowse, a pretty good help around him too. So
Is he
yeah, he's
on?
looking good. But
Is he
he's
on
like
loan still?
I think he is, but maybe
Okay. Yeah.
not. I thought he was, but yeah, he's another player that just he needs more time, I think, and
Hmm. Still young.
I
Yeah.
that's yeah, and that's why I left Arsenal for more time. So it's good to see him actually get that time now.
And then we'll move on to Brentford and Brighton. Maybe we should have led led the show with this, given a certain listener. Um, Jeremy was a little worried. Our buddy Jeremy was worried before this game. But no reason to. Easy going. Got started with
Yeah.
Ivan Toney with an absolute incredible flick finish. Um, but really, the player to talk about for this goal is, I think, Embremo. And Embremo sets it all up because he looks completely isolated or covered on the touchline, and he's able to make a couple guys miss with some really clever feet, and then he's able to feed Onyeka making kind of a darting run forward, and Onyeka does a really good job to pull it back in Tony's direction, and then Tony has a really clever finish with the back heel. But very good play by Mbeumo, but I thought it was interesting to see Mbeumo and Onyeka on the same side. We hadn't necessarily seen
It
that
was.
so far this season.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
thought,
and we haven't seen Tony with Wisa and Mbumo, so that was fun to see too. I'm a fan of Wisa because he's so fast, and then Mbumo obviously is very pacey too. But it also was good to see finally Sergi Canos came off the bench.
yeah,
He was
good call.
on the bench last week, so maybe that's a little bit of a boost too. And Keen Lewis Potter was finally fit enough to make the bench as well. Didn't play, so you have some options there. But I will say one thing that was, I mean, I was worried about this game as well. But one thing too now is David Raya basically is the main guy for a while because Strakosha got hurt in saving a PK in practice. So now it's kind of like if Raya goes out, then we got the really young Matthew Cox coming in. So hopefully we can kind of keep Raya healthy, knock on wood, because there's really no backup now for a while. But yeah, it's good to see. I was worried about Brentford's form, and this was a huge win. Pennick's back finally and didn't look rusty. Ajer too was playing in defense as kind of like a right back, even though he's a center back. So I thought it was a great game. Brentford had a lot more. I mean, Brighton had a lot more shots at Brentford, almost 3-1.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll get to
so
that.
yeah, it's kind of the same as the last couple games we went over with like Villa having a bunch of shots and not necessarily scoring. So yeah, some of these teams just didn't bring the shooting boots.
Yeah, and with Brighton starting to fall into the trap they had with Potter, which it makes sense that it's not the manager's. It wasn't the manager's fault why Brighton were underperforming their XG for like a calendar year straight. Same players that's kind of been shown. But I do want to touch on the second goal. It's just a PK, but it comes from Brentford doing another long throw in, and basically these they're deadly with these long throw ins. Brighton aren't able to handle it, and basically what happens is it looks like Pennick wins the first ball. So Pennick maybe played a role in the flick, and then Veltman's just kind of holding Tony down. I think Tony goes down easily, but his shirt's being pulled down, so it's a good idea for him to go down. So
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and weirdly, Brentford had only 27.6% possession, which is the lowest percentage of possession by a winning team since last May. Everton beat Chelsea with 21.7%
I
possession. So, yeah, kind of weird.
I think it's easily the lowest passing I've seen. 157
Mm,
passes total. That's it's a
that's
good thing.
terrible.
It's a good thing you were up a goal, or you were defending a lead because
That's a good point.
they weren't able to get the ball from Brighton at all. And Brighton kind of
Mm,
had the similar problem that Man City had basically had, where you can pass the ball for fun, but it doesn't mean anything if you're not up a goal, because
yes.
teams really don't have to go and chase the ball essentially. Um, I think maybe another key stat to kind of focus on is Brighton also had 11 corners. And so we've talked about Brentford not being able to defend corners pretty much all season. They defended 11 of these. Now, some of these, Brighton still got on the end of them, and it forced miraculous saves by Raya. Raya was very
Mm.
good. I think he was, again, Tony got 2 goals. I would put him as my man of the match. So
Uh, you know what Jeremy's going to be saying, though, Ben? He's going to be saying, give me more Friday games. Brentford are undefeated in their last 10 Premier League games on a Friday. They've won 8 and drawn 2. So Jeremy's saying, give me more Friday games because
that's not what I would have
undefeated.
expected. But there you go. That's funny.
Yeah, well, and they beat Arsenal last year on a Friday to open the
Right.
season.
They
So,
started off on a Friday. Yeah.
yeah, so Jeremy's saying, give me more Friday games, please.
I like that. I mean, you know, it, it does. They honestly do feel like a different team at home. The Arsenal game aside, um, but I do think the 155 passing to me is a bit of a worry. Another thing I
Yeah.
kind of put down for notes is weird to not see Damsgaard get minutes. Um,
Mhm. Yeah, I don't
but
know what's going on there.
I mean, Raya with eight, seven saves, and a nice bounce back from him because he didn't necessarily have the best game versus Newcastle, in the other week, and so
Yeah.
it's funny. One thing I actually texted to Jeremy in real time is it is funny how like momentum works, and so
Hmm.
you think back to that Newcastle game, yeah, they got blasted. I think what was it 5-2, 5-1,
Yeah,
but
5-1.
it didn't necessarily feel like that way. Right before that, right before Newcastle scored their first goal, Brentford scored a goal. And it was just called off.
Although, yeah,
You
that could have
wonder
changed it.
maybe that could have changed things. And so
Yeah.
you almost saw the reverse here, where it looked like Brighton should have had the first goal in this game. Where again, Raya made a couple really nice saves before Tony even got this chance, and so
Mhm.
things could have easily changed on that as well. So it's just funny how
Yeah.
when you don't take your chances, you're changing maybe the fate of the whole game.
Yeah, that could be the story for the week too. Because a lot of teams, like we said, didn't bring their shooting beats. They didn't take their chances as well, and there were a lot of drop points. So yeah, that's the story of the week for me.
And frankly, they have a Reece James less Chelsea in the midweek. I don't think it's at Brentford. I think it's at Chelsea. But if you're going to get Chelsea at a time, this might not be the worst time to do it. So we'll
Mhm.
see what Brentford do.
Yeah, they're kind of the giant killers last year. So yeah, we'll see.
And I mean, for Brighton, it's it's one of those weird things where like I feel like I don't want to say the jury's out for De Zerbi, but he hasn't won a game yet. He's getting a lot
Mhm.
of praise by drawing Liverpool in the manner that he did. But the one thing that I kind of see is not just the possession that he likes to do. He's putting a lot of pressure on the keeper, and I've seen Sanchez nearly give the ball away in every game that I've watched,
Mhm.
at least, and did
Hmm.
it versus Brentford. So I do kind of worry if Sanchez is going to last long term there because I feel like eventually he's going to legit give a goal away. But
Hmm.
it just feel like the goals have dried up, and you don't really know what they can do. I feel like it's another one of those instances where I don't like teams just only playing with one striker, to be honest,
Hmm.
because it feels you can isolate them sometimes,
Yeah,
especially when you're going against a block, and it feels they don't necessarily have a way to get Welbeck a little bit more service. So I don't know. What do you have any maybe thoughts on what Brighton could maybe do differently, or do you think it's just kind of the way it is, just kind of maybe unlucky stretches for the last two games. One was Spurs too. So I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah, that's true. And I just don't think they don't have the like striker depth to play two strikers.
mhm.
Gross kind of played up with Welbeck. They don't have Mape anymore. He went to Everton, so Welbeck is kind of your only guy, your main guy. But I do think sometimes they're okay with that because we can kind of just dominate the middle of the pitch with an extra player. And Casado, McAllister, March, and Trossard all in the midfield have been playing well, and Gross has played well when he plays in the midfield too. So maybe just continue to do that. But
I'm
the
wondering
fact that
if
they haven't won
I,
is under Serby is starting to worry me.
I'm wondering if teams are focusing on Trossard. I used to think maybe like
Maybe.
Welbeck was kind of the one to obviously because he's the striker, but Trossard was so good versus Liverpool, and I haven't seen him get any kind of the free roam, or the freedom that he was able to get versus Liverpool in these last two games. So
Yeah, that's true.
maybe the next Brighton game, I'm going to see if maybe teams are literally trying to shadow him out of the game because
Yeah,
it
maybe.
feels like they're struggling for creation. Frankly, I think Matoma needs to play more for them. Whenever he comes on, I think he looks pretty good. Him and Marsh actually connected on a few times, creating some chances. And again, Matoma had a ball that Marsh any other day I think probably buries a header. But he was only able to force a rare save. So um, it wasn't. I thought he did try to change it up a little bit in the second half. He brought on Dennis Uzdav. I don't know if
But
you kind of
yeah,
noticed that. So it did seem he was
mhm,
trying to play a second striker. It just didn't necessarily work out.
didn't work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And if they could get him going, that could be their chance to kind of help out Welbeck. But I don't know. I don't know. He just hasn't. He hasn't. Undav hasn't played that great, and he doesn't get. He doesn't get a lot of minutes. So it's kind of hard
Hmm.
to develop that partnership.
Yeah, true. I mean that same we keep talking about themes. That's another theme. Like sometimes guys just it takes a run of form or run of games to get back into form, essentially.
Yeah, true.
But one final thing I wanted to say is Moses Casado had won 12 ground duels in this game. That is an insane stat.
That
Normally,
is.
you praise someone for winning six.
Mm,
He is bossing every game he plays in. It seems.
damn.
And and so we'll move on to Fulham and Bournemouth. This one ends 2-2. This was maybe the best game of Saturday, to be
Yeah.
honest. But it wasn't on TV. Uh, so goals from Solanke. Actually, welcome Dominic Solanke to the 2022 season. We haven't necessarily seen this one so far, and it's a
Mhm.
well worked goal between him and Philip Billing. And then, unfortunately, for them, Fulham able to get one back with Issa Diop. It's a really nice header off a corner kick, and then Bournemouth go ahead with Lerma with another Solanke assist, and then they give it away by doing a bad foul. Lerma is basically hugging Mitrovic on a free kick, and he draws a foul, and Mitrovic converts. So Fulham, it was very similar to what we've talked about already. Fulham dominated as far as shots, 19, 4 on target. Bournemouth had 10, at least, and then 6 on target. Fulham had 7 block shots, so, I mean, Bournemouth were definitely defending. Bournemouth had
Yeah.
31% of the ball as well, and Fulham dwarfed them in passing as well. So, yeah, we'll kind of we'll get started with maybe Bournemouth. What do you think of Solanke, like his performance with the goal and assist?
Yeah, he was great, and they really need that from him. Because he hasn't been hitting the ground running so far, and they don't have a lot of attacking talent. He was the guy. He was the main guy in this Fulham game, and he was great. And I think they really need him going forward because they really have missed him. He's kind of like one of their guys that they know we're gonna have to rely on him to score. And he hasn't so far, and they haven't really been. They've been better, better since they made the move to O'Neal. But a part of that is getting Solanke going. And I think part of the reason Parker was fired too was well, it was the Liverpool beatdown, but also Solanke wasn't doing anything, so they weren't really scoring. So he's a very important player. Kiefer Moore is he's a good player, but he's just kind of a big target guy. So Solanke kind
Yep.
of
Hmm.
offers something different. And they've been talking him up, and he's finally starting to perform. So hopefully he can kind of build on that too, because they really need him going forward. I just look at the team, and there's not a lot of people that are going to score consistently. I mean, you might get some goals from like Ryan Christie or Billing or Tavernier, but they kind of
Billings
need that main guy.
Billings starting to be involved in most well, it seems every game now.
Hmm.
So that's good. I do it's a well worked goal between those two for the first goal, and no, Billing Billings like 6'4", but he runs actually pretty well for his size. So he's a very interesting player. I think he's a Danish national as well. I think he actually
Yeah,
has caps for Denmark, and so it's kind of weird that Bournemouth have ended up with him, but he can maybe be a gem for them. I'm
he's
happy.
got 3 goals and an assist, so he's contributed for 4 goals in 10 games, so not
No,
terrible.
I'm happy for Dominic Solanke because I watched him at Liverpool a couple or maybe a few seasons back, maybe one of the
Yeah,
earlier Klopp years.
he seemed to
So
have a pretty bright future. And
he
Solanke
was.
has 2 goals and 3 assists in 8 games, so he is starting to heat up.
But to final point on Portman is I do feel like it was a missed opportunity here because they kind of gave Fulham these goals. I mean, it's yeah,
Yeah,
they couldn't mark D up on a corner kick, and it feels maybe they felt Fulham had an advantage, a size advantage on set pieces because they also allowed themselves to get done by Mitrovic just by without even getting a kick on the ball. It's just
yeah,
balls in the air, and they're so worried about Mitrovic that they had to bring him down. So,
yeah. I think that's a good point too.
and one thing to maybe touch on Fulham is Fulham are fun on the eye, but they're also very brave under is it Marco Silva
Hmm.
under their coach Silva. But sometimes it works, but sometimes it backfires. And they're playing
Yeah,
Bobby Reed, or Decora Reed. basically as a fullback, but he's not really a fullback by trade. And him and Antonio Robinson really like to be high upfield all the time. And
Mhm.
the issue is when if you ever get caught losing the ball, you can't have something kicked over top of you. And I think that's really what we saw for the first goal. So,
Mhm. Yeah, good point.
but I mean, good result, good result. I think for both of these teams.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's not bad. It moves them into 10th and 11th, so they're in great places for being, two teams that just got promoted.
And then we'll move on to Wolves and Nottingham Forest. Wolves win 1-0, courtesy of Ruben Neves PK. This was not a great game on the eye.
Not at all, not at all.
I mean, Forest honestly, it should have ended 1-1 because Jose Sa did save a PK from Brennan Johnson. Um, yeah, the XG was basically about one apiece. 9 shots versus 10. Both only having 2 on target. And really, I mean, Wolves had better passing stats, but not really. I mean, Nottingham Forest seemed to be kind of struggling to find themselves. It's another time where it seems Steve Cooper completely changed the lineup, and it didn't necessarily work. And
Yeah,
Wolves seem to just be kind of struggling themselves as well. They don't really have a coach right now, and you don't really know
yeah.
what they're going to do with that. And I think it was good for them to have Ruben Neves back though, because
Oh, yeah.
they missed him for yellow cards the last game, and even before that, they tried playing a back three, basically with him as a center back, and they've stopped doing that. They're back to a 4-3-3 with basically 4-4 in the back. So
Yeah. Huge result for them, though. It moved them out of the relegation zone, and maybe they can play a little more free. Now that I mean, they're still near the bottom, but now that they're not in the bottom three, maybe they can play with a little bit more freedom, and maybe start to score some goals too with Neves back.
do you see? There's talks to maybe look at Nuno to bring Nuno back.
Really? Hmm. That'd be interesting. Ooh,
I don't know if that would be. I can't tell if his tactics were getting stale. I mean, it seemed like he struggled. He really struggled after he lost Jimenez after that Arsenal injury, and
yeah,
and
yeah, totally.
and it feels like they have that basically that same problem now. And it seemed like Nuno wasn't able to fix it then. I don't know if he'd fix it now.
No, yeah,
But
yeah, I don't think so. And Nuno had a decent amount of attacking talent. Some of those guys are hurt or have left now. So yeah, it would be tough to kind of cobble together. Well, maybe you could cobble together a team that could, barely avoid relegation. But they got
maybe
Diego Costa
maybe it
as their
helped.
number nine.
Maybe help
So
the vibes. I mean, a couple players are still. I mean, Adama's still there. I
yeah,
mean, Moutinho is still there. So you have a lot of the same squad.
yeah, Podence isn't
Are
terrible.
guys he brought to the club. So I don't know. Maybe it'll work.
Yeah, it could. I don't know. Yeah,
I've seen Dyche's name mentioned as well.
oh, he
But
could work. Yeah, he knows how to stay in the league and avoid relegation.
But to touch on Forest real quick, I think it's a shame that Brendan Johnson couldn't beat Jose Sa because I've been kind of a little disappointed in him to start the season, to be honest. And I got into a bit of a one-on-one during the game on Twitter with a Nottingham Forest fan, and I basically asked, what maybe is the deal with him because he doesn't look the same player I saw in the FA Cups last year because versus
Mhm.
Arsenal, Leicester, and Liverpool. Forest played Liverpool a really good game last February, and they beat Arsenal and clobbered Leicester. And it's just I was wondering, what really has changed? Is it really the players that they lost? And he basically said Jed Spence was basically the most important player on that team. He made so many runs and he was so dynamic that basically allowed Johnson to almost have a free will himself, and he kind of fed off
Mhm.
that. Sometimes they played on the same side, so they're missing that with Nico Williams doesn't offer the same things. Nico Williams is a guy that likes to cross the ball in, he's not really playing. Cooper's not really playing strikers that like to be target men essentially.
Mhm.
So you're maybe seeing, although maybe Dennis can be that. So he's saying
Yeah.
Nico Williams is not the same player that Spence is, but he also brought up they're missing a guy named Philip Zackernagel, who apparently is at Standard Liège, but he was there like number 10 last year. And here's a name that I recognize now, but I didn't last year. They had James Garner playing next to
Mm,
Ryan Yates last year, and so
mm.
they've missed a lot of that nucleus. So it's not just one thing that they brought in a lot of new signings. They lost a couple of guys, so they
Yeah.
they had to bring in new signings in some of these cases.
The Jed Spence is it's kind of a shame because he's not really playing at Tottenham, and he was a really exciting player. I mean, Spence and Brennan Johnson lit up Arsenal in that I think it was the EFL Cup game last year. Just destroyed us. So yeah, I mean that's a good point. Kind of, it's might not be about the players they brought in, but more about some of the players they lost, which is weird to say because they brought in 20 friggin' players. But yeah, Ben, that's a good point because I mean Brennan Johnson had 18 goals and 10 assists last year. It was a championship, but he only has 2 goals in 10 matches here, no assist. So maybe the lack of assist and the lack of goals that could be related to Jet Spence being gone. That's a good point.
It's just he doesn't look. I was really kind of hoping to see a little bit more out of him because even when he's played for Wales, he looks very enthused to take players on 1v1.
Yeah.
He seems like he has a burst of speed, and I haven't seen any of that at Southampton. I haven't seen it.
Mhm.
I haven't really seen him really able to get free on on the goalie even once. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was a bit bizarre. And then we'll finally end with Leicester and Crystal Palace ending basically scoreless. Um,
Mm.
It's same kind of stuff we've seen from Leicester, 4-1, 4-1 with only one striker, and I feel like that's where a lot of their issues are coming from. Crystal Palace, about the same thing, 4-3-3. The only thing I guess I'll say with Palace is, it's interesting how Patrick Vieira is playing Jordan Ayew, or continues to play Ayew, and not Michel Elise. He brought on Elise, on the for a second half sub, but it almost seemed like Palace were only attacking on Zaha's side. They didn't really try to attack on his side. So I thought that was maybe a missed opportunity because you think of Leicester. Leicester have not been good defensively. I think they've been the worst squad defensively. So it was interesting to see them keep a clean sheet and not really have any issues. I think Palace only had one shot on goal.
Yeah, you're right, Ben. Leicester is the worst at goals conceded. They have the most at 24. So yeah, not good. But I think too, it was weird because it was a missed opportunity for Leicester as well. I think they had a lot of shots. Kind of another team that didn't bring their shooting boots, and I mean a draw just it doesn't really do them a lot here. I think the win would have been immense, but as it is now, they're still in 19th. They're tied for 20th basically on points with Nottingham Forest. They just have a much better goal differential. But I don't know, man. We keep saying like, is this Brendan Rodgers' last game for Leicester? Like, when do you think they're going to pull the trigger? Because I mean, they're not doing well at all. And I mean, I guess the last three they do have a win and a draw, so they're doing a little better. But it's starting to get time where they might have to pull the trigger on Rodgers, or is it kind of something where they're backing them to kind of, you know, stay in the Premier League, and you know, we can go a year without financially backing him, and he can keep us out of the championship. Maybe we keep him around because they haven't supported him with money. They
Yeah,
bought one outfield player this year. So
and I don't understand how because they spent a lot last season, they were expecting to get Champions League revenue that they didn't get because they missed out by a spot. But I don't understand how financial fair play would give you so many. I can't imagine the discrepancy would be that different
uh,
by just
yeah.
missing out by just a team spot. But it seems
Mhm.
that's been the reason cited, is they're struggling under financial fair play. Which
Mhm.
is, if that's the case, Leicester's struggling under financial fair play, and City can just make up money just by um, inventing like sponsorship income.
Mhm.
That if something needs to happen with financial fair play, but we don't have to go into the we don't have to go into
Yeah.
that lockbox.
That rabbit hole. Yeah.
I mean, one positive I guess I could say is Vardy came on in the second half, and frankly, I don't know if Vardy is comfortable doing this, but I think maybe the best thing that you could do is make him a designated second half sub because he'll
Yeah.
come on for his tired legs. He'll make these. He looked. He's making runs like Holland makes. To be honest, he came on and immediately tried to split the center backs on a run.
Mhm.
And he kept doing that over and over again. Now I don't think he can do that for from minute one to all the way through anymore. But
Right.
the last 25 minutes, maybe so.
Yeah,
Um,
he still looks pretty pacey. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a good shot there.
And again, harped on it last week. I would like to see Iheanacho and Daka together, at least another time, because the last time it happened was against Brighton, and they scored. They did their job. The team forgot to defend, and the goalie forgot to play keeper. That half
Oh,
versus Brighton, that wasn't their fault. So
yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
and
Like it.
yes, that is it. What you got anything?
No.
Okay. Well, no Champions League this week, but because of the Queen and the English FA, no break for the players this week as well. Other than, well, I guess Arsenal have PSG. City are the only
Yeah.
team with a break.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, quick turnaround for everyone. 3 games, basically 3 games in 8 days for these guys. Any game that you have your eye on, Rex?
Honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to the Chelsea and the Brentford game. I mean, I really want Brentford to win, number one. But Brentford kind of the giant killers last year. I kind of want to see if they can do it again, or at least play Chelsea tough.
Hmm.
So I think that's one of the games I'm looking forward to the most. Just kind of seeing if Brentford can kind of build off their 2-0 win and get a little bit more momentum going.
I like that. I mean, I was looking at that as well. I mean, I'll say Man United Spurs Wednesdays looks pretty good. To be
That's
honest,
pretty juicy.
I think they don't have Arsenal next. Man United play two teams back to back this week. That's gonna be interesting. And then
Mhm.
yeah, Liverpool West Ham. I think it's such a quick turnaround. I'm worried about this a little, to be honest. There's all this talk about Virgil van Dijk having like this impeccable home record, and he's going to have to defend that again in quick succession because Skamaka I think could cause some problems. So worried a little bit about that. But anyways, get to celebrate the city win, and that's basically that's silverware this year. The way the season's gone. So
Hopefully they can build on that result. That's important too.
hopefully as well. So we'll see. We'll see if maybe Salah can get going again. Maybe Doris can get going. But anyways, we've got I guess we got games on weekend as well. So yeah, another double week for us, Rex. We'll see how we
Yeah.
do with that.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, just midweek soccer is awesome. Yeah, the week goes by faster.
Oh, there we go. All right. Well, do you got anything to add or?
No, let's hope our players, our teams are relatively injury free. Because it is getting time where
I'll echo
I just
that.
I just feel gutted for these players to get hurt and are missing the World Cup, and you can tell how gutted they are too. I don't like to see it. So hopefully, let's just keep people healthy. We want to see the World Cup with the best talents. We don't want to see those players out. So let's hope everyone stays healthy.
Yep, good thing to end on. And I'll also say that again, we are available on Spotify if you don't want to watch us on YouTube. It's maybe I think it's easier to stream. I think it's like less data, less bandwidth, at least on
Oh
your plan.
yeah,
I think, but
yeah, it probably is.
maybe not. Anyways, that said, thank you for being with us, and for all of us at the Reserve Squad, you stay squatty.
Stay squatty, everybody. Thanks for watching.